Today's lesson is Biomimetic Architecture, Nature-Inspired Design. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
And I'm Mike.
And the topic for today's lesson is something called biomimetic architecture. And it's all about inspiring design through nature. Okay, we'll talk about biomimetic in just a couple of seconds, but we are talking about architecture. And basically, we're kind of learning from nature and then building buildings as a result of what we've learned from Mother Nature.
Exactly right. We're learning how termites keep their homes cool and using that to cool off government buildings in Australia. And then in day 2, we're going to be actually having a look at a building very close to home here on our lovely island down in Kaohsiung. So I think we should turn our attention to this article. And first of all, let's find out exactly what biomimetic architecture is. And that will be addressed in our first paragraph. So let's check it out. Biomimetic architecture, nature-inspired design. Biomimetic architecture is a field of design that looks to nature for inspiration. The term biomimetic comes from the Greek words bios, life, and mimesis, imitation. In architecture, this means designing buildings and structures that mimic natural forms and processes for the purpose of solving complex human problems.
大家好，标题中介绍名词 architecture， 意思是建筑风格、样式或是建筑学。例如 Modern architecture continues to make use of bold designs in the creation of new structures. 现代的建筑风格持续运用大胆的设计，创造新的建筑物。或者 Modern architecture often emphasizes environmentally friendly designs. 现代建筑风格往往强调环保设计。下一个看到名词 imitation， 表示模仿、仿效或是仿制品。例如 Catherine does a great imitation of her friend's laughter. Catherine 很会模仿她朋友的笑声。或是 This isn't a real fur coat, it's just an imitation. 这不是真的毛皮大衣，这只是仿制品。再来看到动词 mimic， 意思是模仿或是模拟。例如 Some parrots can mimic human speech. 有些鹦鹉能模仿人类说话。也可以说 Toby got into trouble for mimicking his teacher. Toby 因模仿老师而惹上了麻烦。
Okay, let's talk about the first paragraph, everybody. It says, Biomimetic architecture is a field of design that looks to nature for inspiration. Now, when I first started reading this article for our lesson today, I looked at that word and I thought it said biometric architecture, but then I looked a little more closely and I noticed that it said biomimetic architecture, which is something I had never heard of before. But inside that word, we've got the word bio, which means life. And then mimetic means mimicking things or copying things.
Exactly right. So that's kind of what we're going to learn in this first section. Biomimetic architecture is a field of design that looks to nature for inspiration. All right. So if we're copying things or imitating things, we're basically imitating things from nature or things that have life, right? Of course, because biology is the study of life and living things, and we're getting our inspiration for buildings, making buildings that are inspired by nature or how nature uses design in an efficient way. Let's break down this fancy word biomimetic. It says the term biomimetic comes from the Greek words bios, life, as I mentioned, biology or biography. If you read a biography, it's the person's life story, and mimesis or mimesis, imitation. That is the Greek form for imitation. And as Roger explained, that is also where we get our word mime. If you're miming something, you're kind of copying something. You're copying a person's actions or something like that. If you are a mime, you are using your body to copy or maybe also to tell a story. But it says in architecture, this means designing buildings and structures that mimic natural forms and processes for the purpose of solving complex human problems. So there we go. We have this word imitation and the word mimic, and they kind of mean something very similar. It is to copy something. If we talk about an imitation piece of art, it's it's not quite a fake, but it's basically a copy of something. If you have an imitation Picasso in your house, you didn't spend millions of dollars on it, but it will look pretty much the same or exactly the same as the famous painting. It's an imitation. And that is also very similar to the word mimic.
You can mimic a person, for example, by acting like they do or talking like they do. But in this particular case, we're talking about looking at things in nature and thinking, if nature can do it that way, maybe we can do it too, because we have these complex human problems. We've got big problems that we need to solve, and sometimes we just can't think of any ideas, so we look to nature for inspiration. Okay, we're at the end of the first part of our lesson for today. Here comes the second part.
The concept of biomimicry in design has been around for centuries. However, the term biomimetic architecture became more widely known in the 20th century, in part due to advances in science and technology. Today, the field of biomimetic architecture is growing rapidly as architects seek new ways to create aesthetically appealing structures that are also sustainable.
第二部分介绍名词 concept， 表示概念、观念或是想法。举例来说 ，World peace is a beautiful concept。世界和平是很美好的概念。又或者说 I always have trouble understanding complex scientific concepts。我总是难以理解复杂的科学观念。继续看到形容词 sustainable， 指永续的或是可持续发展的。例如The company implemented sustainable practices to reduce its environmental impact. 该公司实施了永续的做法，以减少其对环境的影响。又或者说 Using only reusable utensils is a healthy and sustainable habit. 只用可重复使用的餐具是个健康又永续的习惯。
All right, let's look at our second paragraph and get into exactly what biomimetic engineering or architecture would be. It says the concept of biomimicry in design has been around for centuries. Oh, very interesting. So this is something that people have been doing for a long time. They've been mimicking or copying natural forms and processes for the purpose of solving complex human problems, taking inspiration from what animals do, from what we see in the natural world and the animal kingdom, and trying to use some of those ideas in order to improve human life and improve our own design. So this concept of biomimicry has been around for centuries, for hundreds and hundreds of years. And a concept is basically just an idea, all right? So we're using this idea, we're using this inspiration from nature, taking that inspiration and then putting it into human design and human constructions. So this idea, this concept, and that's basically what a concept is. Once you understand the concept, the theory, the idea, then you can put it into practice in all sorts of different ways in your regular daily life. But first of all, you have to understand what it's all about, what it all means, and how it all works. And that is basically the concept of something. So it's been around for a long time, biomimetic architecture, but it's only in the most recent times, I guess, with modern science, modern engineering, that we've really been able to use this in a super effective way.
Exactly. So it's been around for a long time. It's not a new idea. However, the term biomimetic architecture became more widely known in the 20th century, in part due to advances in science and technology. So again, it's been around for a long time, but it became more widely known in the 1900s, in the 20th century, for various reasons, but in part, it was due to advances in science and technology. It could have been due to other factors as well, but in part here just means because of something along with others.
Today, the field of biomimetic architecture is growing rapidly as architects seek new ways to create aesthetically appealing structures that are also sustainable. So yes, today, biomimetic architecture, this concept has really exploded in popularity, or it's growing rapidly. As architects, these are, of course, the people who design buildings, not the people who actually build them. Those would be engineers or something like that, but the architects draw the very large pictures with the shape and the look and the dimensions of the building.
The blueprints.
The blueprints. They figure out a lot of the engineering, but then the the actual construction workers will actually put steel in the ground or bricks on bricks and actually build things. The architects are the designers, but they're seeking or looking for new ways to create aesthetically appealing structures that are also sustainable. Yeah, architecture is kind of a balance between creating aesthetically pleasing things and also very practical, useful things, because you could have a beautiful looking building that's completely useless because it doesn't fit enough people or it's uncomfortable to be inside. So architects have to balance that. The aesthetics is basically the look, the shape, the artistic side of the design, right? When you look at a building, even if you don't know what they do in there, but you just look at it and go, wow, what an interesting looking building. Look at the different angles, look at the shape of the roof. Think of the Sydney Opera House, for example, as being a very aesthetically appealing building. The Taipei 101 is designed to sort of look like a stalk of bamboo. And that's part of the aesthetics of the building. It has nothing to do with how the building works, how it functions, how efficient it is in heating and anything like that. It's just the look, the shape, the design, the artistic side. So you want that. You want it to be appealing aesthetically, to look nice and attractive, and also have it be sustainable. This, of course, is a very important word these days as we try to protect the environment and lower our greenhouse emissions, our environmental footprint. We're looking for things to be sustainable. Things that are sustainable will not be using fossil fuels. They will not be producing a lot of pollution and waste. We're recycling our water. We're using solar cells to get power from the sun as much as possible. This kind of idea. So, for example, we make a building that looks nice, but also costs a lot less to heat or to cool heat in the summer. In that way, it would be both aesthetically appealing and sustainable, and that is a great goal.
Yep, it's very environmentally friendly. It's very cost efficient. It does not waste energy, and that's where they're getting these ideas. We're using biomimetic architecture to do that in our modern times. Okay, let's move on now to the third and final paragraph for today's lesson. It's kind of long, so please listen carefully.
Indeed, sustainability is one of the main benefits of biomimetic architecture. By imitating nature, architects can create buildings that are more energy efficient and environmentally friendly. For example, termite mounds maintain constant internal temperatures through natural ventilation systems. Therefore, buildings with designs based on this aspect of termite mounds, such as Council House 2 in Melbourne, Australia, employ passive cooling and heating strategies instead of resource-heavy air conditioning systems. This approach not only lowers energy costs, but also makes the buildings more sustainable over the long term.
第三部分介绍名词 mound， 指小丘、土堆或是沙石堆。举例来说 The children enjoyed running to the top of the grassy mound in the park, then rolling down. 孩子们喜欢跑到公园里的草丘顶端，然后再滚下来。又或者说 There is a mound of dirt in the garden. 花园里有一个泥堆。再来看到名词 aspect， 表示方面或是层面。例如 Understanding the cultural aspects of a language enables one to use it more effectively. 了解语言的文化层面能让人更有效地运用它。也可以说Every aspect of Candy's life is managed by her mother. Candy 生活上的每个方面都受到她母亲的管控。最后看到形容词 passive， 表示被动的或是消极的。可以说 If you want to succeed as an actor, you need to be less passive. 如果你想成为一个成功的演员，就不能再那么消极。最后一个例句 You cannot be passive when you are looking for a new job. 找新工作的时候，你不能太被动。
All right, we are back. So let's turn our attention to one building that has actually embodied this idea of biomimetic architecture. It says, indeed, sustainability is one of the main benefits of biomimetic architecture. So that's one of the best things about biomimetic architecture. One of the best benefits that we get is from learning from the natural world because, of course, plants and animals, they do a lot of this type of stuff very, very efficiently. They can't burn oil to create create heat or to cool themselves off in the summer with air conditioning. So how do they do it? Well, it says by imitating nature, architects can create buildings that are more energy efficient and environmentally friendly. We're learning from nature about how to protect nature because I said animals have to blend in, fit into nature very, very well. They can't alter things as much as we humans can with our science and knowledge and engineering. So how do animals do it? And also, of course, how have these animals been doing it for thousands or millions of years without a lot of PhD scientists helping them out? How do they do these things naturally using what is around them? Well, here's an example. It says, for example, termite mounds maintain constant internal temperatures through natural ventilation systems. I love that. That's so interesting. So we're learning about how to build buildings from termites, which are basically ants. Ants of another form. Termites are famous for eating into the wood of your building. If your house is infested with termites, that means that these small ants, which are often white or a paler color, they're sort of chewing through the wood, creating tunnels and holes. They can actually really weaken a structure and cause a tremendous amount of damage. But these are basically small ants. They will live in wood or infest trees or homes or things like that. But also in Africa, if you've ever been lucky enough to go there, as you drive around the grasslands, the savannas of Africa, it almost looks like a pile of dirt or dust or something. But when you come up to it, it's hard as a rock. It's hard as concrete. And that is basically a termite mound created by termites, I believe, using saliva and sand to kind of create their own large colonies, as many ants will dig into the ground and dig this network of tunnels to live in and hide in and breed new ants. Termites do this in mounds, these large piles of dirt.
Yeah, a mound is like a small hill, basically. So again, a termite is a white ant, as you call it in Chinese. And they have made these mounds in such a way that they maintain a constant internal temperature by using this natural ventilation system. Okay, so ventilation just means air is able to circulate. You want to have good ventilation, for example, in your house. If you don't have good ventilation, then it feels kind of stuffy and it's difficult to breathe and you can't sleep at night. So you want to have good ventilation with fans and air conditioning or whatever. And a system, of course, is when you have all these different machines working together to make the air flow smoothly through your house or through your building. But they don't need air conditioning units or fans in these termite mounds because they do it naturally. They have designed it in such a way, probably through evolution over thousands of years or millions of years, to allow the air to flow in and spread out throughout the colony naturally and evenly so they feel cool no matter where they are.
Therefore, buildings with designs based on this aspect of termite mounds, such as Council House 2 in Melbourne, Australia, employ passive cooling and heating strategies instead of resource-heavy air conditioning systems. When we talk about an aspect of something, it's kind of a particular part or feature of something. This thing will have many different parts, many different aspects. We can also talk about maybe a facet or a portion of something. So if we're talking about an aspect of a great party, well, throwing a great party has many aspects. You need good guests, you need food, you need drink, you need entertainment. You'd like to have it in a cool location. So these are all parts of throwing a party. All right. So buildings with this type of aspect, this ventilation system that has been borrowed from termite mounds, that will go in, that aspect will go into making this building biomimetic and successful. But of course, there are many other aspects to building a building, having enough space, having it be safe, having escape routes in case there's a fire or something. These are all different parts of designing an effective building. But this aspect of cooling has been taken from termite mounds, and it's employing passive cooling and heating strategies. So I guess that is something that termite mounds would have almost in a very, very similar way. Maybe not exactly the same, but in a very similar way.
To employ here just means to use something for a specific purpose. So this particular building employs passive cooling and heating strategies or plans or ideas instead of resource-heavy air conditioning systems. So they have these passive cooling systems. Passive means it's not active, it's acted upon. So they don't directly cool the place or directly heat the place with machines. They try to use a system of ventilation, maybe the way the building faces the sun or something like that, or the angle of the roof or whatever, or how the rooms are distributed throughout the building. This is a passive way to allow cooling in the building in the summer, which of course is during the winter here. And then, of course, they have to heat the place during the winter when it's cold down there in the southern hemisphere.
Very interesting. So I guess passive cooling in your home would just be if you're lucky enough to have a room where if you open one window on one side and open another, you get a nice breeze kind of flowing through the room. No fan necessary, no air conditioning running, no power being used. It's just the natural flow of the air and, of course, the shape, location, and design of the building. So that sounds great. And they're not, or instead of using resource-heavy air conditioning systems, which, of course, is the way that most buildings, especially in hot countries, would be designed if they're not using these modern biomimetic methods. Resource-heavy means it just uses a lot of power, right? It takes a lot of energy, a big power bill to cool off a large building during the summertime, especially a large public building like that during the summertime. And so, of course, they use air conditioning systems. Air conditioning, of course, AC, as a lot of people know it, is that cooling system that we have, those machines that produce cool air. But, of course, they also use up a lot of energy. And if something is being conditioned, it's just sort of being adjusted, it's being adapted, it's being improved in some kind of way. If you put conditioner on your hair, that's after you shampoo, and the conditioner should make your hair look nicer and shinier and feel softer and smoother. It's not actually cleaning anything. It's just sort of polishing it up, shining it up, improving its appearance. And that's the kind of idea that we have this word conditioning. Some people like to go to the gym and lift little weights. Will make their muscles just look nicer rather than get bigger. They're trying to condition themselves.
And this approach, this idea, or this way of tackling this problem not only lowers energy costs, but also makes the buildings more sustainable over the long term. So that's a good idea. We can learn a thing or two from termite mounds or from the Australians themselves. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. We still need to hear from Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第3部分提到，根据白蚁丘这个面向设计的建筑物是采用被动式冷却和加热策略，而不是耗费资源的空调系统。那文中它用到动词 employ 来表达采用的语义。我们来学它的字首字根。好，看到 plex 或是 ple， 或者是 plic 或 pli，或者是 ploy 或是 ply 这一类的字根呢，表示折叠、对折、交错等等。那么在 employ 这个字当中，它的字首 em 是来自 en， 表示 in 进入。字根 ploy 则表示折叠，同学们就可以试着联想，把什么折叠收好，以便作为未来的使用，用这方式去联想到 employ 它有使用、利用的意思。那么 employ 当动词，它其实还有雇用的意思。好，顺便补充几个这一类字根的单字。第一个补充的是 deploy， 它的字首 de 表示否定、相反，字根deploy 这个部分表示折叠，那其实 deploy 它的字源意思就是 unfold， 有表达展开啊、展示的意思，所以 deploy 就是表达展开、部署。它可以用来表达像降落伞的展开啊、人力物资的调派，或者是军队的部署等等。第二个补充的是 explicit， 它的字首 ex 表示向外，那么字根 plic 表示折叠，it 是形容词字尾。那么向外折叠该怎么联想它的意思呢？假设你有很多相同颜色的 T-shirt， 那你把正面的图案都向外折，那么这样一打开衣柜抽屉就一目了然，可以看清楚哪一件是你想要拿的。好，那我们就从向外折叠可以看得一清二楚，去联想到 explicit， 它可以表达清楚明白、明确表达的，或是毫不掩饰、露骨的。它的相反字 implicit 则是表达不明说的、含蓄的。好，那下一个补充的是 perplex， 它的字首 per 有完全的意思，那么字根 plex 这个部分表示交叠。 同学们可以试着联想，当所有的思绪完全交叠在一起，缠绕在一起，那就会感到很困惑。所以呢 perplex 这个动词就是表达使什么困惑，使什么费解。另外课文有用到 instead of， 它是片语介系词，后面要接名词或动名词去表达代替什么而不是什么。 instead of 后方的名词或动名词就是指被取代的人事物。举例来说， She chose the aisle seat instead of the window seat。 她选了靠走道的座位而不是靠窗的座位。好，那比较一下 instead 这个字呢，则是副词，表达说作为代替反而却，那常常用来表达某件事没做而是做了另一件事，或者是没有选择某事物反而选了另一个事物。那么 instead 它可以摆在句首或句尾，注意摆在句首的时候记得要用逗号跟句子隔开。例如 Gary couldn't afford a new car. Instead, he bought a used one. Gary 买不起新车，而是买了中古车。好，那么以上今天重点整理，我们来回顾今天单字吧。
Architecture.
Many people admire the unique architecture of that historic building.
Imitation. The child's imitation of her mother's voice was quite amusing. Concept. Mr. Costa explained the concept of gravity to the students. Sustainable. The farmer practices sustainable farming methods to protect the environment. Aspect. Carla's positive attitude is an important aspect of her success. Passive. The device relies on passive cooling, using airflow rather than a fan. Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Mike.
I am Roger. See you next time.